In Ufele, every mother smiled the day after their harvest, and every mother had only one child. No one spoke about this, not to strangers, not to the elders who already knew, not to the young girls who would one day become mothers themselves and learn the truth in the dark beside the swamp on their knees. The women of Ufele carried things. They carried water on their heads. They carried grief behind their teeth. And once every harvest season, they carried something else, wrapped in white cloths, still warm, into the place where the reeds grew so thick no man had ever dared enter after sunset. The men of Ufele tended to look away during harvest week. They found reasons to travel, to trade, to sleep deeply. This had been the arrangement for longer than anyone could trace. The yam grew enormous in Ufele. The cassava never rotted. Children who survived their first year in Ufele never fell sick. Strangers who passed through always remarked that the village smelled of something sweet, something mineral, like blood and rain mixed together. And then they would leave quickly, unsettled, without knowing why. Emeka was 19 when he arrived from the north to work his uncle's land. He noticed immediately that all the families had exactly one child. He assumed it was poverty. He assumed it was choice. He did not assume it was the swamp. His aunt Ngozi was the first woman to speak to him honestly, and even then, she only spoke in halves. "We give what is owed," she said, shelling beans on the veranda on the third evening after his arrival. Everything that grows from this ground grows because something beneath it feeds. You understand farming. It is no different. "What are you giving?" Emeka asked. She looked at him with the particular patience of a woman who has already grieved everything grievable. "What we can afford to give and still survive." He did not sleep that night. By morning, he had convinced himself it was metaphor. The kind of spiritual language old women used to describe sacrifice, prayer, abstention. He had heard of villages that fasted during planting season, that abstained from meat, that gave offerings of palm wine to the earth. He catalogued what his aunt had said into that familiar, safe container and sealed it shut. Then the harvest came. Ufele changed during harvest week in ways Emeka could not categorize. The air thickened, not with humidity, with intention. Women who had been warm and chatty in the market became sealed, private, moving through their chores with the deliberate calm of people performing a ritual they had rehearsed 10,000 times. Children, the single children of every household, were kept indoors. Their usual sounds, the running, the shouting, the arguments over who owned which mango, all of it went silent. On the third night of harvest week, Emeka heard the women leave. He did not mean to follow. He told himself later that he rose only for water, that his feet carried him to the doorway by accident, that what he saw from the threshold was not what it appeared to be. But the moon was full and pitiless, and the procession of women moving single file toward the swamp was not something that could be misread. Each woman carried a bundle, white cloth. Still, Emeka's heart became a stone in his chest. He counted 15 women. He counted 15 bundles. The shapes inside the cloth were small. They did not move. He followed. The reeds at the swamp's edge were taller than he had understood from a distance. They rose past his head, closing behind him like a door. The ground beneath his feet turned soft, then softer, the kind of softness that is not soil but something wetter, something that gives too easily under weight. The smell hit him before he saw anything, iron thick, ancient, alive in a way that decay is technically alive, full of process, full of digestion. The women had formed a circle in a clearing at the swamp's center. He could not understand how there was a clearing. The reeds should have made it impossible. But the circle existed. and within it, the ground was perfectly flat and perfectly black, and at its center there was water that did not reflect the moon. The eldest woman, he recognized her as Mama Chukwueke, 90 years old if she was a day, a woman who needed two sticks to walk in daylight, stood at the edge of the black water and spoke in a language Emeka did not recognize. It was not Igbo, it was not anything he had encountered in the north or in transit. It sounded geological, like something the earth would say if the earth had a throat. The women began to unwrap the bundles. Emeka pressed his fist against his mouth, but what emerged from the white cloth was not what he had feared. Each bundle contained yam, enormous, ancient-looking yam, their surfaces dark and wrinkled, shaped in ways that yam should not be shaped, elongated, curved, almost skeletal. The women placed them one by one at the water's edge, and then they waited. The water moved. Not like water moves with wind or current. It moved with direction, with appetite. The yams were drawn in slowly, without splash, as if the surface had simply decided to include them. Gone in seconds, everyone. Then Mama Chukwueke turned and looked directly at Emeka. She could not have seen him. He was deep in the reeds. The darkness between them was complete, but she looked directly at him and she said in clear, unaccented Igbo, "Now you know why you only count one child per house. The first one always belongs to Ufele. We found a different way to pay." Emeka ran. He did not stop until he reached the road that led north, and he did not take anything from his uncle's house. Not his bag, not his sandals, not the money he had earned in 3 weeks of labor on the land. He ran barefoot on a laterite road in full moonlight, and he did not slow down until the smell of Ufele left his nostrils, which took until almost dawn. He told no one. For years he told no one. Who would he tell? What would he say? That Ufele fed its swamp with something he never fully saw. That the harvest there was genuinely extraordinary, and everyone in the region knew it and bought the yam and cassava without asking why it grew so large. That the women of Ufele had made some arrangements so old it had become indistinguishable from nature. He married. He had children, 3 of them, which felt like abundance, felt like defiance. He grew his own food on poor, ordinary soil that gave modest, honest returns. His yam was never the size of what came out of Ufele. Then, 20 years after he fled, the news came north. The harvest in Ufele had failed. Completely, catastrophically. A whole season where nothing grew, where the ground turned grey and packed hard as stone, where the cassava rotted in the earth before it could be pulled. He heard 3 weeks later that the swamp had risen. Not flooded, risen, as if something below had pushed upward, as if something beneath the water had decided it was tired of what it was being given and wanted the original payment instead. By the time aid workers reached Ufele, there were no children in the village at all. Every family had one. Every family had had one, and all of them simultaneously were gone. The women of Ufele sat in their compounds in the specific practiced quiet of people who have grieved everything grievable and found, at last, that there was nothing left to give. The yam never grew back. Subscribe for more dark African stories.